All right, just like Tarantino, Scott Rosenberg definitely uses music as an influence to write his scripts. He written Con Air, Venom, Beautiful Girls, High Fidelity, which is very obviously using music as to write your stories.
And Jumanji 3.
And Jumanji 3, like, I don't figure out music with that one. But here, Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead is a title of a Warren Zevon song from 1990 inspired to make this movie. This movie gets a lot of emphasis as just a clone Tarantino. I'm gonna figure out what Kyle thinks about this. I think this is the first time you've seen it.
It's my first time watching the film, and it's your fourth, but you haven't seen it in like 2 decades.
2 decades, so I'm gonna figure out if it works, kind of works a little bit. So.
Yeah, we'll find out. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from Goethe Film Reviews.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and thanks for watching. Thanks for finding us. You can also follow the show on Twitter and Instagram. You can contact us with that way. You can also check out the Patreon for some great deals and tell us what to do. Today we're going to talk about a film that's kind of been neglected a little bit, and some people emphasize it as a Tarantino clone, and that's why we're going to talk about the movie Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead.
Yes. So the synopsis is, Jimmy the Saint is in debt to the wrong guy, a criminal known as the Man with the Plan. When the man offers him a simple errand, redirect his son's former lover away from her new beau in order to clear his name, Jimmy accepts. He assembles a crew for this simple job, but in the world of gangsters, no job is quite so simple.
Okay, this is his first time. We've done a lot of reviews, and I've been waiting for quite a while to review this movie with you because I want to see what your opinion, because you love Tarantino, and this is kind of regarded as a Tarantino clone. So what did you think of this movie?
I don't want to break your heart, man. I thought this movie was boring as hell. I was so bored.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's start maybe with the things that we both liked about the movie.
Yeah.
And I'll start with one of the things. I think the best performance in the movie, I think the most interesting character is Christopher Lloyd's Pieces. I don't know what it is about him, but again, he is able to chew that scenery so well.
He runs that old beaten down theater, which is almost a metaphor of his character.
Yeah, and I like that, again, he is a character dealing with this dying parts of himself. Like, he's lost fingers. They don't know if it's some sort of like disease or what it is, but like parts are literally falling off of him.
Right.
And I think that's such a weird character to even craft, but to put Christopher Lloyd in the film playing that character, someone we recognize as being like Doc Brown, you know? Right. And then he comes off as just this like really kind of scummy, crummy guy who seems to be maybe the only guy in the crew with a brain.
Well, and has a little bit of heart to it. But also, I talked about in writer workshops, and I emphasize a lot of people give me scripts, and playing it safe. I always say you have to write a character that's going to break your heart every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that character breaks your heart every step of the way. He even gets it out with money, and he's like, no, I've had a good run.
Yep.
And that's probably the most devastating scene. Actually shot really well. I do like, one of the things I really like in this movie is cinematography and graphics. I think the story kind of...
I agree.
Yeah, but
I agree.
Elliot Davis is a wonderful cinematographer. He's done a lot of movies. I got him on my list right now.
He did Out of Sight for
us. Out of Sight for us.
Our previous episode.
My God, he did Legally Blonde. He did Twilight.
He did
Lords of Dogtown. So he's got a reputation, and he did a marvelous job for Twilight too.
I think Twilight looks great. It just doesn't look the way that the movie ends up being, if that makes sense. You know, like, I don't think there's anything problem with the visual flair of the shot composition for Twilight.
No.
And again, that's the same thing here. It's the same thing in Out of Sight. Really does some interesting cinematography work, and not all the films look the same. Like, he seems to be able to work within the confines
but he has
of
certain
story.
Gels that he works with this. I mean, definitely a lot of greens and reds in this movie with a red lighting and everything. Mm-hmm. So I say the story's it's kind of fat. We all know it's going to happen. It's going to crumble apart a little bit.
My biggest frustration was being able to say, well, that's going to happen. Yeah, it happened. All right. It comes down to, I think I didn't find myself invested until about 40 minutes in, because the part with Jimmy, I like that he's kind of running this like place where if you're dying, you can give like a videotape to your kids and stuff.
Right. But that's all that. That's all.
Yeah. And it's weird that he's been running this business that's been a failing business, but it's been failing since he started it. So in a lot of ways, like, you know, it's this weird idea of he owes money to the wrong people for this videotape service he runs. I think that the whole portion of him getting initial like task given to him and assembling the team didn't work for me because they feel so much like every other movie like that.
Right.
You know, there's a Rick and Morty episode where they do this, where they every single time they like need to build a crew to get rid of the other crew. Like,
yeah. And then you knock off the crew, and then they all don't get along.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that could have been a cliche, and there are, right?
Yeah.
You have a Jimmy the Saint who's a crook, but we kind of supposed to be, oh, he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
But they have this very overly used, oh my God, it's Lady and the Tramp Italian restaurant scene.
Yeah. Well, and you get him and you get Gabrielle Anwar, and I do believe you could fall in love with Gabrielle Anwar on sight.
Oh, yeah.
I believe so.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I was much younger, I fell in love with her in the movie Body Snatchers in the 90s.
There's a brief time my teenage self in early 1996 in this movie that, yeah.
Yeah, so I can see that happening. But I don't think there's any development to their relationship, and I personally don't think that Garcia and her have the right kind of chemistry in the film.
Now that I'm a little bit older, it doesn't seem. It just seems like they're just having fun.
Part of it is that Anwar is such a young actress, and she, prior to this film, played a lot of young roles. Like, even though I know she was like of age, she played teenagers like a year or two before this. And Garcia kind of has this. He always felt to me like he's older than he is. Like he plays older. You know, I mean, even him in The Godfather, it was tough for me to. The Godfather Part 3, it was tough for me to believe that he was like early 20s.
And this is right after The Godfather.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I didn't really buy the age difference. I didn't buy that they had anything in common. And we don't really see them have a relationship. We see him recite some Italian to her, and then they're walking home to her apartment. And that's
then
about
he gets
all
some
we get.
rules and everything.
Yeah.
This is actually edited by Richard Marx. I don't know how they got this editor.
Yeah.
Because he's one of the best editors you can get. So they also got one of the best cinematographers. I think Elliot Davis is very underrated. But they got one of the best editors. I think it's edited. It keeps you interest. Even though the story can be boring.
I think it could have been shorter. I think it could have been about 20 minutes shorter. I think if you actually had a cruising speed of 90 minutes on this thing, I think you would be really hit. Because people compare this to Pulp Fiction, and they should be comparing it to Reservoir Dogs. I think it has a little bit more in common with Reservoir Dogs or True Romance. I think it has a lot more in common with that. But that True Romance and Reservoir Dogs run at a tight clip. There's never time for you to get bored. Whereas Pulp Fiction is not a correct comparison. Pulp Fiction is a very different film, structured differently. It just happens to have guys in suits shooting people. Like, I get that. But they're not the same movie. So people, I read all this stuff about it's a Pulp Fiction clone. I'm like, you're just comparing it because it came out a year afterwards. That's not the film's problem. It's that I do think, though, the 40 minutes of getting set up takes way too long. And I think there's a hard tonal shift after the actual task that they're about to complete goes sour. There's a heavy tonal shift from comedy action to like drama thriller.
Okay.
And like we lose a lot of that bits, and that was my biggest problem with it, was that as the film veers into this aftermath, I was interested in the idea. I think the story is great. I'm just not interested in the movie.
There you go.
I think that he puts together as best as he can, because Richard Marx too, we have to recommend the fact that he is able to turn a mess into a movie. Because Dick Tracy I heard a lot of stuff about how much footage for that movie was shot and about how like much of a problem that film was. I think Dick Tracy turned out to be a great movie. Apocalypse Now, there's like 6 hours of movie, and he made it watchable.
The problem with Dick Tracy is that story was Batman.
Yeah, exactly.
From a year after.
But when you consider how much he did with Apocalypse Now, that movie is brilliant, and that's in large part to the editing, because he made a 3.5-4 hour long movie very watchable.
Miles of footage.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's, and I don't want to say editing saved this movie, but this is a mess of a story. And I think it's almost intentionally supposed to be messy. And Richard Marx kind of cleans it up a little bit. But, I mean, he did, like, my God, Pretty in Pink. He did Dick Tracy, as I said, say anything, said Almost Fire. So any of those Rat Pack movies, as good as it get. And one of my favorite guilty pleasures, he did Timeline. So I think...
Wait, he did Timeline, the Donner movie?
Yeah!
Oh, we got to talk about that, man!
But also, this gets trapped into what I kind of call your sleek suit noirs.
Okay.
And that's kind of part of the sleek suit noirs. I mean, you know, even though Jimmy the Saint's the only one that's wearing a sleek suit. And I don't really regard this as a noir, especially the ending. I think it's more of a crime story. But I think it's trying to be a little more salacious, a little more daring with his dialogue, being a little more homophobic.
There's a whole lot of homophobia.
Homophobia that was acceptable back then, but it's after 20 years of watching, like...
It's writing that's indicative of the time period. Yeah. And I understand that, but yeah, it was like...
There's a lot of that.
I was like, whoa!
A lot of that toxic masculinity stuff. And then, I don't, I know Walken's limited to what he can do, but it's fun to watch him. Yeah.
Again, he chews scenery pretty nicely.
Yeah.
And we know that Christopher Walken is a brilliant actor when it comes to the one scene character. He does it in Pulp Fiction. He does it in True Romance. He can come into a film for one scene, and he can own it for that entire time he's on camera, and then he can walk out. So we know he's capable of doing a lot with very little. I don't think he's a problem with the movie. I just don't think... I have a lot of problems with these characters that are named not names. The Man with the Plan, Easy Wind, Franchise Pieces, Critical Bill.
So that's where you lose people, because if you have so many nicknames and stuff like that, you're like, who the hell are you talking about? Or what the hell are you talking about? Right?
And I think, like, we know Vincent Vega from Pulp Fiction. Like, we know the character name. We know, like, even if a guy has a nickname, that he has a real name.
Pumpkin and Honey Bunch. We know, we know Pumpkin and Honey Bunch are, and that's their nicknames.
Yes.
For how much little they do. But you want a duration of story of Easy Wind and all this. If you have a collection, it gets kind of like cacophony.
Yeah.
Like, just noise, like, what the hell's going on?
So I think that's why I go back to this idea of, I actually think this story is great. I think the story is great in this movie. The idea that...
I thought you said it wasn't.
No, the story I think is great.
Oh.
I just don't think the screenplay is great or the finished product. But I think that if this story
I gotta listen. Right.
If let's say George Lucas came up with this story, like, George Lucas can do a story, but he should pass it off to a different screenwriter. This is one where I know Scott Rosenberg is a great screenwriter now, but Scott Rosenberg did not do a great job with this screenplay. It felt like indicative of the time period that this movie was made, to throw a lot of quick, witty banter, but none of the banter works. The characters are developed as if they each have one really interesting thing about them. And I noticed that the first time those two gangsters show up to meet Jimmy, one of them is reading the dictionary, and he's misusing the words. And I was like, that's going to be his character. Like, his character is he just misuses the words. But the idea of the story that Jimmy's brought in to do one job, a simple job, gets with a crew, it goes south, and then he's trying to save the crew members. I think that's really cool.
That is really cool, because you're the same person to kill you. And like he says...
and he knows he's safe.
Right.
But he's pushing his luck to
and
try and save
that's what I really like about the story, that you know you're condemned, so you try to absorb as much time as you can.
Well, and he's not condemned, though. He's told, just get out of town. But I like that he's like, I'm going to push it. I'm going to try and get this one guy out. And he gets warned, don't do this. You need to leave town. These guys are going to die. And he's like, I'm going to push it anyway. And it's a push your luck movie, where he's trying his best, sacrificing his chances in order to save each one. I just wish that the overall execution of that story worked better.
I do. One of the things I do like about this movie is the great casting.
Yep.
There's wonderful people. You got Bill Cobb's in this. You got Don Cheadle for a little bit. You got
Don Cheadle, and then there's that actor he's with in that scene that was in like Showgirls, and Tiny Lister was also in it too from Friday.
Tiny.
There's a great little shot of all three of those actors together.
Steve Buscemi playing a very menacing person, probably the most menacing person this side of Con Air.
Which is another Steve Scott Rosenberg much,
right?
You know, so like. It's interesting that he can command what he does, because he is I forgot that he was playing that role. So every time he showed up, I was like, "Where's the witty banter?" Oh no, he doesn't talk much. Yeah,
but, right. And I talk about this as it's a very green script for Scott Rosenberg.
Mm-hmm.
I think he learned his lesson, because a couple of years later after this, he wrote Con Air, which is an enjoyable movie for what it is.
That's considered a modern action classic in a lot of ways, to a lot of people, you know?
Right, and that has a variety, that has an ensemble cast of characters, and all of them are bad and everything like that, and you have the one good character. Nicolas Cage is almost playing like Jimmy the Saint in this movie. But I think after Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, Scott Rosenberg figures out what he needs to do with the writing, and this is, I think, he knows the failings, right?
You know what I think
it's a mess.
Though? I think this is not his voice. When you watch other movies that he's written, there is a distinctive voice to the way that he writes. I would say High Fidelity, and when you look at High Fidelity and you can compare it to the dialogue and writing work that he did in the Jumanji sequels, he has a very strong voice for those kinds of characters. The kind of not larger than life characters, but ones that kind of have a captivating character appeal to them. This movie is him writing in someone else's voice. This is him doing a studio job that just wasn't for him.
And I think a lot of people, hey, this is hot now. This kind of dialogue, this kind of edginess of being, you know, homophobic dialogue, racist dialogue that's being used, and let's just, you know, because that's your character. You know, like Treat Williams being disgusting all the time, absolutely disgusting, even though he's aware of it and he doesn't really care. But right, I don't think this is his authentic voice, and he gets an opportunity later on to show.
Yeah, and I'm happy he did, because I do think, like, when I was watching the film, I was like, what is going on with this movie? And I looked at all of his other movies that I had seen, and I was like, he has better writing than this. It has to be the studio job of, like, you have to write the movie like this. And that's why it was so frustrating seeing these characters that have one trait that defines their entire character.
Yeah.
And I noticed it especially when you compare, when you look at it from a feminist perspective, the 3 female characters in the film could be, and I would dare say should be, removed. Because including female characters for the sake of having females in your movie doesn't...
Sarah Trigger's role, Gabrielle Anwar's role, and Farouka's role.
See, I was thinking Jenny McCarthy as well.
And Jenny McCarthy.
So there's 4 female characters, and I would say the only one that I actually really liked was Franchise's wife, but we don't know her. It's just, we get, like, the way that she shows us Jimmy, like, through someone else's eyes.
All 4 of the women all 4 of those characters are just vessels.
Yeah.
Just to move along with the males.
Yeah, because the Anwar storyline you could move out. It really doesn't have any bearing. I thought it was going to have bearing, and by the end of the film it doesn't. Fairuza Balk, I think there was like a shoehorned attempt at bringing resolution with her character. I don't think it worked very well.
That seems a little forced in.
Jenny McCarthy kind of just made me hate some of the dialogue Christopher Walken was saying. Like when he was talking about how he keeps her around because she gets him hot, even though he can't feel himself getting hot. I was like, gross.
Okay, at the time, that was hilarious.
Yeah, 1995 didn't work for me at all when I watched it.
No, it's not going to work.
But I did think, Sarah Trigg, like, at least, like, the way that she's utilized as a very small character in how she shows us Jimmy works well enough, but she's maybe the only character I would have kept in if I were cleaning up the script. You know, the female characters.
And it has a lot of one of my favorite 90s things of when we do flashbacks. It's almost that cut camera, that's scratchy, over glossy flashback of Bernard and the girl together. They do all those flashbacks and it's overexposed. I love that 90s thing that we did all the time.
I always felt
and
like
it's jumpy. It's got to be jumpy.
I've seen that in Tales from the Crypt episodes before, so that should tell you where it kind of belongs, but not in a bad way. I'm not saying that in a bad way at all, actually. I agree with you. It's got an interesting kind of the time, you know, showcase where it couldn't work today as well. But so I'm going to places it.
Before I want to get Gary Fleder and Scott Rosenberg also worked together on some other films, like Imposter. They did a remake of it was from Britain, Life on Mars, but they did the American version, Life on Mars, which is very musically based, and it's like 70s, and there's a little more of a mystery entanglement to it. It's a little bit like that. So, and then Happy Town. I haven't seen Happy Town yet. I don't really know, but they also worked together on that limited series.
That's okay. So this is why, because I was only looking on Letterboxd for these guys, and so that only has movies. But I was aware of Gary Fleder from his work on The River, which was a found footage horror TV show from the creator of the Paranormal Activity. I thought that show was pretty good, actually. It was trying to like struggling near the end, but I thought it was pretty good for what it had. I thought the American remake of Life on Mars was pretty good. Again, I didn't watch the whole series, but I remember the episodes I did watch. I liked them quite a bit.
Yeah. And it's very, very...
There's definitely like the abilities for these guys that just didn't work in this movie. So I'm not going to deny them and say like this movie's terrible. Neither of those guys should ever work again. No, that's not the case. I just think this was it felt to me like a bad day at the office for both of them, where they just did not mesh to the product that they were trying to create.
And I've been waiting for such a long time to get you to watch this movie to get your opinion on this, because this is when it came out in '95 and I was a teenager. I thought it was one of the greatest movies ever made.
Okay.
And of course now I'm older. I'm like, it's just because maybe Gabrielle Anwar is in this, and you know, it's that salacious attitude that nobody has a regular job and all that stuff. And Christopher Lloyd is in it too.
See, in Gabrielle Anwar, if I want to watch her, I'm going to watch Son of a Woman. I'm going to watch Body Snatchers. I'm going to watch Burn Notice. Like I'm going to watch something else.
Right? Yeah, they're great.
I just think what it comes down to for me is the up or down for me is if I were to be channel flipping and I came across this movie, would I stay on and keep watching for a while, or would I flip away? And I'd probably flip away. To be honest, it did not work for me, and it's so heartbreaking because again, I think the story is really cool. Like, if this is a movie I think you could remake.
That's what I was going to say.
It's a movie that you can take another stab at.
I think people completely forgot about it because there was a small window in early 1996 that this was a big hit in the movies and it's a big massive rental because that was the hit.
That's the only place that made money because I remember looking up months ago when you first mentioned it to me. This film tanked at the box office.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really had a life on VHS. But then it kind of like seemed like it teetered. I think it might have gone out of print for a while because it seemed like it completely disappeared for a number of years. And people are like, why is this movie not a cult classic? Because it really isn't. It kind of just is completely out now.
Well, the other thing is it's produced by a piece of crap. Too.
That's also true. That happens.
That happens, and that's why this movie's going to tank also with it.
Yeah.
But
to me personally, I think the strong work that's put in, because again, I want to say, I like Andy Garcia in a lot of movies, and I think he does a great job in this movie with what he has. But I've seen him do a lot with little, like even cameo appearances. I saw him in the movie Book Club, and the movie Book Club is not.
He doesn't really have a lot to do in
Untouchables. That. Yeah, in Untouchables, he works with what he's given. He has 2 minutes of screen time in The Mule, and I think he's great. He's got 2 minutes of screen time in Barb and Star.
He's got 5 minutes of Barb and Star, and it's fantastic.
And he's fantastic. And I think he can work a lot with very little, and he can make a bad movie better, and he can make a good movie great. I think he's one of the elements that makes The Godfather Part 3 better than people claim it to be. Right. I think Godfather Part 3 is great, and I think he's great in it. He can do a lot. So I like him. I like Christopher Walken. I like Christopher Lloyd. People don't talk about William Forsythe, but William Forsythe is great. And I think him playing like second fiddle to Garcia in this movie, they have a good dynamic together.
But it's that damaged. He's damaged, but he knows he's damaged, but he doesn't want to resolve it anyway. I'm gonna go with it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a lot of elements that could work here, and I think if we were talking remakes, I would say absolutely. But the problem with remakes is people don't want to remake a movie that's bad. They want to remake a property that's recognizable. And that's not what remake should be. A remake should be looking back at something that maybe didn't work and saying, I could do it better.
I think you could probably flush it out and have a new title to it.
That's probably how you have to do it. Is access it a bit differently.
Change it up. Have it all women and then treat the men like crap for men characters.
And that's the thing with the women characters too, is I would say eliminate them because you're not doing them well. Because you don't have a place for them. You're putting them in the movie to maybe add a female.
They're just vessels.
Poster. Yeah. You want to put someone on the poster. Maybe you want to convince the guy that wants his girlfriend to go with him that it's got other people.
This one of the main problems I wrote down is the female characters are just vessels and reciprocals for whatever the guys do.
That's fair,
yeah. Who cares about what you feel?
Yeah. So sadly, this one's a bit of a loss on me. I'm sorry. It breaks my heart to say it, but I had a lot of faith.
But that's the point of writing it. You got to write characters that break your heart.
Yep, exactly. And this one just broke my heart for all the wrong reasons.
All right. Have you heard about this movie?
Yeah.
I think people forgot about it. It was on rental shelves. I mean, it was a weird title where people talked about it. I was like, what the hell is this title?
Yeah. When you look up this movie, you just find a lot of Denver websites telling you things.
What to do with Denver, right.
But let us know your comments down below, what your thoughts are on this film. Not a lot of people online talk about it. There's not a lot of YouTube videos that I've seen talking about it. So
even if the story is okay, it's great cinematography and great gaffing. I think the gaffing and the light, how they light Gabriel Anwar and Andy Garcia, even though the dialogue's kind of clunky, it's fantastic.
Yeah. It's got
just like Twilight. It looks fantastic, but just
we're not comparing the two.
No,
I'm not. If he's gonna do that, I'm gonna walk out. But once you get a chance to let us know your thoughts, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Check out that Patreon as well. You can join some of our patrons like Brian Eggert, who contribute every single month to our Patreon and help make the show a little bit better every single month. We do appreciate y'all. When you join the Patreon for as low as $1, you get access to the different posts that are available on there. You can also check out Picks with Kyle and Nick, our new show that is set for patrons only for as low as $1 a month.
We just started.
If you want to do $5 a month, then you can join up and check out, you can actually give us ideas and stuff that you want us to talk about on the show. Other movies, maybe not this one, maybe something else. But that's all up to you. Check out that Patreon down below. And until next time, you can find my film reviews, over 1,000 of them, on GoFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and give it a name.